R.J. Harris.
Hello, Manhattan, New York. My name is R.J. Harris, and I'm running for the Libertarian Party's United States presidential nomination because I want to restore freedom, liberty, the Constitution, and the Republic. And to do that, ladies and gentlemen, we have to win in 2012. I believe with all my heart that we can win in 2012 and that we can put forward a slate of candidates and statesmen that can compete with the other two major parties and beat them on every single major issue of our time by using the philosophy of liberty and the Constitution of the United States. I will ask you to visit my website, rjharris2012.com. That's rjharris2012.com, because there you will find that I got my start politically in 2010 running as a very well-known Ron Paul Republican for Oklahoma's 4th U.S. Congressional District, and that we did a very good job there. And you will also learn that I only did that from within the Republican Party because I visited with the state party chair of the Libertarian Party, and there was absolutely no ballot access in our state for the Libertarian Party. But I'm happy to report that since then, and in the last several months since the announcement of my presidential campaign, the Oklahoma Libertarian Party, with help from the Harris campaign, has gathered 37,000 signatures towards the 52,000 signature goal. The deadline is March 1st, and we will continue to strive to get the rest of those signatures. And folks, I'm here to tell you today that I fully believe that we are going to be able to get the Oklahoma Libertarian Party on the ballot for the first time since Harry Brown ran for president. Also, when you visit my website, you will learn things about me, like that I've been married for the last 21 years to my wonderful wife, Jennifer, and that we have 5 beautiful children together. You will learn that also during that time, I've been an Oklahoma National Guard officer for 20 years, 4 times deployed in the service of this republic, and have learned firsthand from the pointy end of our failed foreign policy that it's got to stop. Also on my website there, you will learn that not only have we managed to do so well getting the Oklahoma Libertarian Party on the ballot, but you'll also see links and you'll see other things that are going on in Oklahoma that will show you that more and more and more the most active, the most energetic political movement that's going on in our state right now is the Oklahoma Libertarian Party and is this ballot access drive. You will see links to newspaper articles from all over the state, including the Oklahoman, which is the largest newspaper in the state, speaking very highly and very well, not only of the R.J. Harris 2012 presidential campaign, but also of the Oklahoma Libertarian Party and how they are about to get ballot access. So you're going to see that the mainstream in Oklahoma is waking up. They are beginning to understand a lot of these freedom and liberty issues, and they're taking our candidates and our positions on the issues seriously. Also, what I'd like to say is, for us to win, we need to be able to nominate a candidate who will stand in front of the media, in front of the interviewers, and on the debate stage with with President Obama and whoever is nominated out of the GOP, and stand without fear on the philosophy of liberty, on support for the Constitution, and never back down and never feel like we have to run and hide behind some other philosophy that may or may not be more accepted in the mainstream. Instead, we need to take those opportunities to explain and mentor on why our political philosophy is so much more correct on a particular issue. That's why we need a presidential candidate who will look into the camera and answer the tough political questions and say, as president, I will end the unconstitutional war on drugs. We need a president who will say, without fear, that I will end our unconstitutional interventionist foreign policy, which is making the United States weaker around the world, not stronger. And we need a candidate who has been out there on the front lines of that foreign policy, who can look to the American people and look in their eyes and say, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you firsthand that what we're doing around the world is spreading our all-volunteer military forces thin. we're breaking the Constitution to do it in the first place, and that's the #1 problem with the foreign policy. But that these activities are making us weaker, not stronger. We're defending everyone else's borders instead of our own, and that's making us weaker, not stronger. We have National Guard units like mine that I came from that go without sometimes training and equipment and things that they need. Why? Because those resources are being spent to police other people's borders and fight other people's wars. And ladies and gentlemen, we need a candidate who will say without fear that that is making us weaker, it's not making us stronger, and as president, I will stop it. And there's a host of other issues that you'll be able to see on my website, rjharris2012.com. But once again, we need candidates that will not be intimidated by the media, not be intimidated by the other two party candidates, to feel that they have to couch their message in such a way that it dilutes our libertarian philosophy. So we need also candidates that will say that they will stand up for example, our Native American tribal sovereignty and self-determination, that they will fight for the restoration of our Constitution and for our state sovereignty. We need candidates that will take on these issues, not run and hide, and be the candidates without fear. And I fully believe with all my heart that any of these candidates that you see up here today on this panel, any of them, and that includes a good friend like my good friend Lee Rice, who could not be here today. I fully believe that any of these candidates here today will be those candidates without fear. So I thank you for coming today. I thank you for sharing this debate time with us, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you so much.
Bill Still.
Hi, my name is Bill Still. I'm from Virginia. Basically, I'm a writer and filmmaker, and I bring what I bring to the party here is an entirely different group to the libertarian community. That is my documentaries have over 20 million hits on YouTube and other video providers. So I think we can expand the party considerably under my leadership. I have a book out right now which is called No More National Debt. My first documentary video was called The Money Masters, which probably a lot of you have seen. The video I came out with a couple of years ago was called The Secret of Oz. All that's available on YouTube, or you can actually buy it at billstill.com. I also, there was a gentleman here talking about the TSA. In a YouTube I did about 2 weeks ago, I called for the elimination of the TSA. So what's the essential character? And I want to focus the libertarian debate here down to what I see as more basics to try to get things focused a little bit. What's the essential character of the last 1,000 years of human history? It's humanity's escape from serfdom, the Magna Carta, the Constitution, etc. Now, how did we do that? We did it by all banding together against monarchies, essentially, and forming governments of self-determination. And that's the whole. I don't take the pure anarchistic view that all government is bad. I just think we have to have rightly constituted government as per the framework laid out in the Constitution. And what is the basic concept of the U.S. Constitution? What is this basic concept that has made America free, that has made the American experiment the most successful in the history of the world? What is that basic concept? Yet it is nowhere mentioned in the document. Can anybody say the name? It's the separation of powers concept. That's what's at the basis of the U.S. Constitution. What does that mean? That means that power is spread out to the maximum extent practical. This is deconsolidation of power. Everything that I think about, as far as politically speaking, or philosophically speaking, is what maximizes deconsolidation of power. Lost my place here. So anyway, my major issue, of course, in this campaign is the economic issue. I think unless we are able to claw back the money power from the big banks, and do all of you realize how our money is created? Do you all realize that none of it is just printed by the government? It's all created as an interest-bearing debt. By whom? Not by the Federal Reserve, it's by the commercial banks. unless we understand that this is the basic problem. This is why we can't claw back the political power, because we have not even identified that we have to claw back the financial power. And until we do, we aren't going to get anywhere. That's what my 2 videos were about. In fact, the video I did 2 years ago, The Secret of Oz, won Best Documentary of 2010 at the Beloit International Film Festival. For example, you have the specter of we're going to have Romney, the fake Republican, running against Obama, the fake American, coming up here. And do you know who the top 5 contributors to both of these campaigns are? The largest commercial banks. That's exactly right. You're going to get absolutely no difference other than the icing on the cake. It is the money power that is the essential problem, and until we claw that money power back, we're never going to get anywhere. Okay, so I think that the Libertarian Party really has to clarify its message and return strictly to a national sovereignty message. I'm all for national sovereignty of Britain, of China, of Brazil, of the United States. Why? Because what is the separation of powers concept on the international level? It's the independent nation state, independent sovereignty of nations. So I think we really have to focus our message always on sovereignty. I'm just going to stop right here. Thanks.
Okay, now we'll have questions from the audience.
Okay, my first question to you guys is a practical one.
Let me just give the format for a second. 30 seconds. Please keep it to a question, not an opinion. Each candidate, you can direct it to a candidate, but all candidates have a chance to answer, and the candidate's responses should be limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, getting on the ballot in New York
I'm
State.
sorry, 2 minutes.
Getting on the ballot in New York State is going to cost us $40,000 next summer. I ran the last 2 petition drives here. What are each of you going to do to help us raise that money?
Let's just randomly go from left to right, then right
Either
to
side.
left if it's
Either
not.
Raise your hand if you want to answer that.
Let's start with Gary.
Well, I was not aware of that until just now, but obviously I'll find out what we can do to help that out.
Okay, thank you.
I think that what I would like to do and will do, what I'd like to do and will do is set up robocalling, appear in the communities, build the Libertarian Party, explain how we can create jobs so that we can have people to work for us and to go out and get donations. I think we need to build the party in New York, and robocalling, personal appearances will be the way of doing that, I think.
Well, what I intend to do is provide the New York Libertarian Party and the Libertarian parties of the entire nation with a very positive and energetic and electable, viable candidate and ticket, top and bottom, so that the energy that you need here in the New York Libertarian Party to get the signatures, the volunteers, the fundraising apparatus, I want to help lead that effort by providing us with an electable candidate and an electable ticket that people will want to get behind and show the New York Libertarians and in fact the citizens of this republic and all around the world that all of this doesn't just rest on the shoulders of Ron Paul, and that if he doesn't make it in the GOP nomination, that we have a candidate ready to pick up the banner of freedom and carry it forward, and that more than anything I think will help make sure that the New York Libertarian Party is on the ballot.
Well, I'm going to put RJ in command of that committee, but I can give him a large list to work from. I think boots on the ground is the way to go.
Before we take the next question, how is the volume? Can people hear them without the microphones? Okay, how about this gentleman in the gray shirt?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, okay. Well, I actually would like to hear you guys talk about your management style. You ran a state, a business, you run a law firm, you run a film shoot, you run a platoon. Could you talk a little bit about how you express your management style?
Let's start from Bill.
Ah, gee, I'm sorry. I'm at a loss as far as what my management style is.
No, man, hands off.
I think what's at the core of your question is our leadership style. And what I intend to do is work with these libertarian statesmen that you see before you, and also stateswomen that are in the Libertarian Party throughout our nation, and find those candidates or those persons with the expertise that we need, that also have a deep rooted understanding of the Constitution and libertarian philosophy, and put them into positions where they can affect the promises that we're all going to make up here today. This is not something that we can just do in a vacuum, or one or two of us. If we're going to lead this nation out of its current economic malaise, if we're going to lead this nation out of the unconstitutional things that it's been doing, and out of some of the preconceived notions that the other two parties have foisted upon us, then we're going to need to come together as a national party and spread our message of freedom and liberty throughout the entire body politic, and then be able to put people in the right places, in the right offices, who will understand that the goal is to cut some of these federal agencies, many of them, is to cut out the unconstitutional spending. People that don't have necessarily an eye to just preserve their political appointment for the next 4 to 8 years, but that they understand that they're going into a department with the intention to cut it and to remove it. And so that's what I have always done as a leader, whether it was in my platoon or whether it was in my battalion or in my small business. I brought in the people that I really believed would be best to help me do what it is that I was trying to do, and then trust them to get that done, and of course manage and supervise them to ensure that it's getting done.
I've had a team of salespeople when I owned a school, and I know what it is to manage people that are in a business. You have to pick good people and rely on them. You can't micromanage. If you do, you're going to have people lose their incentive. So you have to select good people and give them an idea of what you want, and then let them go and try to watch and sort of manage by exception. If the exceptions come in and you see something's wrong, then you try to modify it. But that's my management style.
So, I may have hired more people than anybody else in the room. I mean, I'll just make that outrageous statement. And let me tell you this, it's really easy to hire, but the crux is to fire. I mean, that's the real crux, is to find out, is to actually ascertain whether or not a person is doing their job or not. Because you hire the best possible people that you can, and in spite of hiring the best possible people that you can, you make mistakes. It's just a reality. But if you can't cut through the mistakes, and if you can't fire, it's not successful at all. So you hire the best people that you possibly can. You take your hands off. You let them do their job. But if you don't ascertain whether or not they're doing their job, and if you don't correct that, then that ends up to be a terrible situation. So, as governor of New Mexico, I had a cabinet meeting every single week. And by the way, I hired all my cabinet heads with one goal in mind for every single cabinet head. Work yourself out of a job. Work yourself out of a job. That's why I'm hiring you, so that you can actually do away with whatever it is you're doing. And in spite of making the best decisions that I thought possible, like I say, no matter how good you think you make those decisions, you make mistakes. And that's the crux, is not necessarily hiring, it's firing.
Hey, Mr. O'Connor.
I think one of the big challenges for people who believe in liberty in running for office is exposure and getting the message out to as many people as possible. So, as compared to conventional or past campaigns, do you guys have any specific strategies on how to get the message out to as large of an audience as possible to get as much exposure as possible?
Go, Gary.
Go ahead.
No, Paul, I think.
I think that the public has some problems today, and they relate to losing their homes, losing their jobs, and not having enough income, not having business opportunities. I think focusing on that with publicity to the press, getting the press interested in these issues, that there are solutions to them, I think that we can generate plenty of activity, press activity for us, by pushing what we have that no other party has.
What we're doing at the R.J. Harris campaign is using innovative technologies like what you see here today, which we're getting video of this, from our friend Danny, and of course we're immediately going to get it out there on the internet so that everybody across the nation can see it, whether it's libertarians that are waiting to see this, or whether it's citizens that 2 months from now, when all of a sudden when people are starting to pay a lot more attention to this race, they'll be able to go to the internet, to our websites, to our Facebook pages, and see all of this that they might have missed while they're not paying attention at this moment. But that's the great thing about the power of the internet and other social online mediums, where we can reach out. What I think is going on is, since the invention of the printing press and our founders being able to get all their little pamphlets out and talk about liberty issues, we have that possibility now. Again, we're kind of reinvented today with the internet, and so we're using innovative technologies like Ustream, YouTube, Facebook, social online medias to spread this message as far and wide as we possibly can. And of course, early on, we will there's a high bar to things like radio and television ads, but you know what? Those things are not reaching nearly as many people as we've seen in previous elections and previous generations. And so that's what we're doing at the Harris campaign, to spread this message as far as it will go, is by taking the message to where the people are. And right now the people are online. They're interacting with each other online, and that's where we're going.
I'd like to agree with that. I mean, what I've preached in industry and government is that if you're not on the tube, you don't exist. And that's especially pertinent to the Libertarian Party, where we're short on money and long on internet access. I put out a YouTube 10-minute production once a week, every week that I'm not traveling. I'm already completely up to speed on that, on how to do it and what to do it on. And as far as management style, I just thought of something. That is, I'm already selling ambassadorships to fund libertarian ballot access.
Well, you have the crux of it. I mean, the crux of it is how to get this attention. And the exciting part to me about all this is that the Libertarian presidential nominee will be on the ballot in all 50 states. And given the discontent in America right now, I really think that there will be a focus on what does the third party have to say. Well, the third party is the Libertarian Party, and that's what you start with. But if you're spitting it out every day, so our campaign, my organization, is spitting it out every single day. Who's to say what happens in the middle of the summer, in August? Who's to say when they call on you and that you're addressing these issues on a daily basis? You're putting the product out, and that product is liberty and freedom and the personal responsibility that goes along with that, and it's jobs, and it's the economy, and it's balancing the federal budget. So politics, it's all about momentum, it's about having momentum, it's about getting on the wave, and there might just be the wave this go round.
Chris Darby.
I thought better of asking this question. Maybe we want to turn off the cameras, but there's a law in one of the states that it is illegal to have sex with animals provided the animal exceeds 100 pounds. What would your position be on such a law?
I'll take that. That's a 10th Amendment issue, and I don't care about it. Anybody else? Next. Sex with animals? Everybody doesn't want to comment on this, right?
There's a guy running for president, Ron Paul, and he's
No, really?
Yeah, and he's managed to inspire a huge apparatus behind him, and at some point, it's possible that his candidacy may expire, and leaving all of this huge apparatus with nowhere to go. And it's possible that one of us might be in a position, one of you rather, would be in a position to pick up that apparatus. I'd like to know if any of you have any plans for getting control of that apparatus, or attracting those people, or have made any contact with the Ron Paul campaign on being able to leverage that, because I think there might be a huge opportunity there if all of those thousands of people could move over to us once Ron Paul's out of the picture, if that happens.
I'll start with Gary since he's already standing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay, that would be the best way to go.
Very excellent question, and I kind of alluded to it in my opening remarks. My 2010 congressional campaign was endorsed by Senator Rand Paul. Most of my donations came in from the Liberty movement, from Liberty candidates, started by none other than Gigi Bauman right here in our audience. The support that I continue to receive out there is really coming in long and strong from the Liberty movement, from the Ron Paul supporters, who are understanding that yes, they do need a backup plan. They need a plan B, if you will, if their guy doesn't make it. And I have proven through my 2010 congressional campaign and all the things I've written and talked about since then to be, you know, very articulate, very strong on the principles that Ron Paul has articulated. And that's not to say that we're exactly, you know, lined up on every little issue. There is some separation, but on the issues that matter in our time, you know, I've been able to prove, I have a track record of being able to win over the Liberty movement supporters, their donations, and I think that any one of the candidates up here that continues to reach out to that awakening body politic that's understanding the Liberty message, that we will be able to bring them, you know, into our house, into our tent, and use that strength and energy moving forward. And I would just like to say that, you know, that I myself and the Harris campaign has done very well with that in the past, and we continue to do so.
I would like to take it from a slightly different approach, and you'll find out that I take most things differently. That's inventiveness, I think. But I would like to have Ron Paul adopt what I'm urging about job creation. And I would hope that that would get him the nomination and that he would become president. I would be very happy if that happened. But I think that he needs to add jobs, a realistic program for creating jobs, for dealing with higher education. He doesn't have that. I'm offering to him, and I think if he adopted it, he would have a much better chance of winning the election, the nomination and the election.
So Ron Paul asked for my endorsement in 2008. I gave him that endorsement readily, and I asked all of my supporters in this primary to vote for Ron Paul if they would. I don't think he's going to be successful in getting the nomination, but I think what's important to point out is that every single one of us here, every one of us, not just the four of us here up here, but all of us are messengers for an agenda that's about freedom and liberty. And so when people hear it from different, you know, I always said I wanted to provide stereo speakers for Ron Paul as opposed to a mono speaker. That when people hear it from different sources, when people hear it for the 20th time, and I'm one of those people, oh, I get it, I've heard it many times, but this is the first time I've actually understood it. Well, that's what we need, and yes, there is a huge opportunity here to, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think there was a huge opportunity here for the Libertarian candidate nominee to win, and I know that sounds outrageous, given that the biggest showing has been plus 1%. But it is possible, and the Ron Paul phenomenon, Ron Paul has done great, wondrous things to advance the cause of liberty, but he's not the only one. There needs to be a lot more of us. It needs to be in chorus, and that may play itself out.
Yeah, well, I just want to say a member of my executive committee is Stephanie Jaski. She's the founder of Fed Up USA, as well as my chief economics advisor is Carl Denninger. He runs the largest economics blog in the world. It's called Market Ticker. And my campaign chairman is the chairman of the Illinois LP, Matt Urban.
Okay, Rebecca, did you have a question?
Yes, I do, and I say this with all due respect to all the candidates, but my question really is for Gary Johnson. You have my vote no matter what. And it's because of your background in the public and private sector, and I also happen to respect your, sports acumen. But why in God's name are you running in the Libertarian Party in 2012? I'm writing Ron Paul in no matter what. If you ran in 2016, I don't care if it's Democratic Party, Republican Party, or the Libertarian Party, I would support you. But 2012, with all due respect, is for Ron Paul.
I'm gonna make a
So-
quick commercial announcement, and that
During
is.
my question?
Yes, that's a great way to cut you off. But we will answer that question. Should you write in Ron Paul or vote for the Libertarian Party candidate, Danny Panzella, and I will debate that at the February
Okay.
MLP meeting.
Okay,
But, gentlemen, go ahead and
Okay,
answer.
very well done.
Well, I don't think Ron Paul is gonna be the nominee. I don't think he's gonna be the nominee.
You still write them in.
Well, that may be, if that's the case, that's great. But if he's not, then where is this message then gonna come from? Well, it's gonna come from the Libertarian nominee.
Can
I would like to,
No, we have to let the candidates answer first.
I would like to respond.
I'm sorry?
I would like to respond.
Yes, all the candidates.
I fully understand your sentiment, and I've heard it in more places than just from you here today. But even Ron Paul would admit that the restoration of our freedom, our liberty, our Constitution and Republic is much bigger than any one person, including himself. And ladies and gentlemen, I truly do in my heart fear that each year that goes by that we do not reassert libertarian government and libertarian principles in our government and reassert the freedom and liberty of the people is another year closer and closer that we come to just the total annihilation and destruction of all of those things. So I do not think that if Ron Paul were here with us today, that he would encourage people to write in his name. I think if he was here today, he would encourage all of us to pick one of these excellent candidates up here, that includes a couple that weren't able to be here today, and say, listen to them on the issues, listen to them. They have taken their inspiration from what he's already done, and pick one of them and help make a difference in 2012. Not 2016, not 2020, but let's restore our freedom and liberty now.
I'm afraid you may cost us the election, and I'm really worried about it. Because if Ron Paul does not get the nomination, we inherit 1/3 of the votes in this country, potentially. And that one vote of yours could cost us the election, so please don't do that.
I am writing them in.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Bill?
I don't have anything.
Okay, the gentleman in the gray shirt here?
My follow-up question to that is the reverse of it. If Ron Paul gains the nomination, will you give a strong campaign so that this party in 2016, even 2014, getting Libertarian Congress critters in there is probably a hugely vital thing to actually get any changes. So simply getting the Libertarian Party known out there, will there be a strong campaign even if Ron Paul becomes the GOP nominee?
I can speak for everyone that there will be, every one of us would go out there and push this party, otherwise the party will be destroyed. We have to keep pushing and getting our libertarian principles out there no matter what.
And let's let the others speak for themselves as well. So, anyone else?
I agree completely.
It
wouldn't slow me down.
We have to make a commitment to you, the Libertarian delegates, the future delegates, that we will be the standard bearer of this party, win, lose, or draw, whatever may happen in the other two parties. So that's a commitment that we would have had to make with ourselves individually and out there with you, or else we really couldn't, with all honesty, be up here. But I think that, Gary articulated it well. It looks like that it's getting tougher and tougher for Ron to win in the GOP, and so it becomes more and more and more important that our candidate and our slate get ready.
Look, I'm going to continue running as a Libertarian candidate for president, and part of my being here today is to shamelessly plug myself. So I want to shamelessly plug myself, and in that vein. They did an analysis of all the presidential candidates, all of them, and which presidential candidate had the best job creation record. Carl, I know yours would be better, but among those presidential candidates that are currently running, it's me. And I know, Carl, you do better in this category too, but the ACLU came out with a report a couple of weeks ago. They graded all the presidential candidates. They gave them torches based on civil liberties. And in third place was President Obama. In second place was Ron Paul. And in first place was Gary Johnson. So I want to shamelessly plug the fact that I think I would be the best candidate among the three, and that potentially could emerge. And then I'm back to the fact that anything can happen if you're on the ballot in all 50 states, and the fact that as this goes forward, you got to be churning the product out day after day after day, and anything can happen.
Mr. Ramo.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. What strategy do any of you have for securing electors to be in the Electoral College December 2012?
Meaning winning a state.
Or any electors for that matter. Maine and Nebraska have different rules.
Anyone?
Well, I mean, just speaking the obvious, you're out there trying to get more votes than any of the other candidates. In New Mexico right now, they're doing an analysis that, holy cow, Johnson could win New Mexico? And hopefully that's the case with any libertarian candidate, but that's what's currently going on. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have that stuff being prominently talked about.
Well, and also most states have bound electors, and so the thing to do is to go out and win on election day, because then those electors will be, of course they'll be selected from our own state party conventions and so forth, and they will cast their ballot shortly after November for one of us.
Well, any decisions on particularly which states to focus on?
We don't have a provision for follow-up questions, so I'm going to just invite the other two candidates to speak.
This sounds like a guy with a plan. I'd like to hear about this.
Let's do that after. Carl? Okay, Adam.
All right, crazy question. Let's say it's 2 weeks before the general election. Obama and random GOP electorate are running basically statistically even, and the Libertarian Party is running at, let's say, 15%, which means that you can't win, but if you threw your weight behind the GOP candidate in those last, let's say, 10 days, would you guys do that, or would you risk another 4 years of Obama? And I want to I'm just curious if, for everybody, if you would stay in and basically try to, lobby for yourself, why?
I'll take it first one. Well, I know just from analysis of YouTube data that I pull equally from both the right and the left, so I don't think that would be a problem. I'd stick with it.
Yeah, I think you definitely stick with it, because we're going to be able to win just as many votes from the Democrats as we do from the Republicans. This isn't just a panel of ultra conservatives. We are libertarians, and we are going to be much better than President Obama has been on the war, talking that policy issue. We're going to be better than he is on the socially liberal issues like freedom and liberty. We're going to be much better on the economic issues than the Republican candidates who have gone along to get along. We all know that the Republicans have gone along with the increasing the $15 trillion in debt, which their own party is screaming about. They have gone along with the president on the budget. They have gone along with the president on the NDAA. So, we can pull just as many votes and win fair and square just as many votes from the left as we can from the right. So I think that partially there will kind of defeat the premise of your question in that, and certainly not, I don't think any candidate would then back out and throw, because if we're at 15%, then by God we can get to 30, and that's all we have to get to.
The real problem is it doesn't make any difference to Goldman Sachs and many others who wins the election. They view it as either Republican or Democrat. I view Tweedledum, Tweedledee, and we should take every goddamn vote that we can get, and regardless of where it is, and let the chips fall where they may, and let us be, and of course, be the elected.
I echo everything that's been said, and then there's also the fact, and maybe somebody here can elaborate it on it a little bit, and that is that if the Libertarian candidate polls 5% in the national election, Libertarians will get $90 million from the federal government in matching funds, and you may decry that as, well, that's the root of all evil. Well, the Libertarian candidate is the candidate that's going to balance the federal budget. The Libertarian candidate is the candidate that is going to slash spending unlike any other candidate, and taxes like any other candidate.
Fred, did I see you had a question? Fred?
Yeah, the same question I asked Carl Oberg to all four competing candidates the idea of taking every poor person in this country, give them $10,000 a year, or $20,000, $30,000 a year, get rid of all entitlements, no more food stamps, no more welfare. The poor would be better off, the government would spend a hell of a lot less, it would go away, the budget deficit would go way down quickly, and it would have the nanny state running for the hills.
I'll take that first. I think that's a horrible idea. And I would only quote Nesta Webster, the great British historian of the 1920s, who in her book took this theoretical scenario and said, if you were able to reduce the net wealth of every individual, make it all even on the morning of day one, by the afternoon of day one, the wastrel will have overspent and the thrifty would have gained that amount of money. So you cannot possibly have that equality. That's just ridiculous.
Under the 10th Amendment, social welfare issues are not supposed to be handled by the federal government. They are things and creatures that are supposed to be handled by states, individuals, as we libertarian believes, by individuals, by private charities, by private organizations. Those are not things that are supposed to be handled by the federal government. The problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money, and you just totally run the nation into bankruptcy in an attempt to provide, which never ends. We're $15 trillion in debt. Some say even higher than that based off of numbers that aren't being reported. And if more and more socialism was the answer, then the 15 trillion or the 30 trillion we're already in debt would have solved it. So no, I do not agree with even one more step towards socialism at the federal level.
I think we need to have community, we need to have jobs, we need to undo what's happened and allow a free economy to work as it did in the past. The government is taking too much, and the more the government's involved, the higher the costs get, and the more we are heading towards bankruptcy. We have to stop it, and getting jobs and focusing on local and community is the way of doing it, I think.
I'm proposing a 43% reduction in welfare spending, in Medicaid and also Medicare. As governor of New Mexico, I oversaw the reform of Medicaid in New Mexico. We took it from a fee-for-service model to a managed care model. We improved healthcare delivery, and we saved hundreds of millions of dollars by doing that. At the time, I believe that as governor of New Mexico, if the federal government would have granted me, the state of New Mexico, 43% less money, done away with all the strings and the mandates, that I could have effectively overseen the delivery of health care to the poor. I think I could have done the same thing with Medicare, which is also a fee-for-service model, just changing that to a managed care model. So what we need to do is we need to give it back to the states. We need to give it back to 50 laboratories of innovation, 50 laboratories of best practice, and that's exactly what you would have. We're so competitive, there would be best practices that would get emulated, there would be failure that would get avoided, but that is the solution. And so, I'm going to give it to you in New York to implement your $10,000 a person plan, and we'll see how it all works out. We'll see if yours is in the catastrophic failure category or, wildly successful.
I'd like to ask a question regarding the intersection of immigration and naturalization. I'm actually trying to phrase this neutrally. My friends who are against the Libertarian Party accuse it of wanting no borders. Others who are libertarians say the number one responsibility of government is to protect the borders. Economic libertarians will say, who cares if a Mexican crosses the
open border thing at all.
Whenever I have an issue, over and over again, the argument against open immigration or immigrants in general isn't that there is a feeling out there, whether it's correct or not, that immigrants take American jobs and or that they take up socialistic benefits that they haven't paid into. So what I'm proposing is to stop that type of behavior. In other words, stop the social welfare programs at the federal level, which shouldn't be occurring for citizens, let alone immigrants or legal immigrants or what have you. And also to completely eliminate as much as possible and cut back the overtaxation of our entrepreneurs and our businesses and the overregulation of our entrepreneurs and our businesses. Kind of, for example, like the restaurant regulations that were attempting to be passed here in New York. I'm totally against those kind of things, and I would begin to roll that back as much as possible at the federal level so that those two big arguments against immigrants and immigration go away. Because by bringing business and jobs back to the United States, by eliminating that overtaxation and regulation, then there will be plenty of jobs go around, more jobs than we actually have people, and nobody will really have a problem with immigration at that point. And also is, if those immigrants are not collecting any types of federal social welfares that people have a problem with, again, you've totally disincentivized the argument against immigration. And let me just add this to immigration. Once we are able to do that, we can't do these things in a vacuum. Once we are able to eliminate those federal social welfares and the federal socialism, and once we're able to bring jobs and industry back to the United States, then what we've then been able to create is a system where folks want legal immigration. We all need the legal immigration, and here's why. We have emerging markets in China. We have emerging middle classes in China and in India and in other emerging first world nation states. We have to be able to increase the size of our middle class, grow it, and see them do well and prosper, so that way they can, that we have a market base for our entrepreneurs and our American businesses to be able to do business with and to sell to. So it's our founders recognized the importance of immigration, and so they made sure that there was no regulation on immigration until several years after the ratification of the Constitution. And so, almost everybody in this room, I'm sure, has an immigration story. I have an immigration story. I'm mostly, half Kiowa Indian, and I'm also Irish. My Irish background came from Ireland, came over as boomers and Sooners, and I'm very proud to be an OU Sooner, but they came over, and so think about that when you're thinking about taking on immigration.
I've developed my policy finally on immigration, and I've spelled it out, and I've distributed this. My flyer is up front. It's very complicated, and I was reluctant to try to do it on a partial basis. I've thought it through, though, and a couple of the points, the main points, I don't believe in open borders. We just can't supply food, housing, water, education, jobs. All of this we can't supply for the world, because the world would come here, most of them, if they could get here, they would come here. So we can't have that. It's obvious we can't do that. We need to legalize drugs to stop a good part of the problems at the chaos at the border. We can control our borders a lot better if we're not dealing with the drug aspect, the militarization and all of the problems that we have with gun running and coyotes and everything like that. I mean, we've got to eliminate the war on drugs and legalize drugs. And we need to give states the rights to enforce the nation's immigration laws. I mean, I can't understand why we've been fighting the states who are trying to enforce the nation's immigration laws. And we need to eliminate the government subsidy of illegal immigrants through all of these costly programs and discourage them from coming here, because as long as we make all of these things available to them, they will come, and we're going to be unable to absorb them. But with the jobs program, that's why it's so complicated. With the jobs program that I'm saying we should do, you're going to eliminate unemployment, and we're going to be clamoring for immigration. Believe it or not, we will be clamoring for people to come in and do the work that won't be done by the people who are already here. So we need a responsible program to encourage people to come here, maybe a day people, and the others on a permanent path towards citizenship. It's complicated.
Well, I was governor of New Mexico, border state, and I will tell you that when it comes to workers from Mexico, we're getting the absolute cream of the crop when it comes to workers from Mexico. Are Mexican workers coming across the border and taking entry-level jobs from Americans? Absolutely not, because you and I as Americans, we can sit at home and collect a welfare check that's just a little bit less money, or the same amount of money for doing nothing. So we need to start off with welfare. It should be about work, it should not be about welfare. Should we build a fence across the border? No way! Come on! That would be an incredible waste of money. That would be like building a fence around Manhattan and keeping you in or out. Come on. It's not going to happen. You're going to get in and out of Manhattan, even if there's a fence around it.
Like these German fence.
So we need to make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa. Would Mexicans stand in line if the line was moving to get a work visa? Yes, they would. They would stand in line. So we need, when it comes to work visa, that should be a background check and a social security card so that applicable taxes would get paid. Implement the fair tax. Taxes won't be an issue because regardless of whether you're illegal, legal, visitor, nobody's going to avoid paying the fair tax. And then, yes, legalize marijuana. And I believe 75% of the border violence with Mexico goes away. And I start off by talking about legalizing marijuana, believing that if this country will legalize marijuana, we will take giant steps forward when it comes to the notion of looking at drugs as a health issue first, not a criminal justice issue, that drugs should be decriminalized. Because if we can't connect the dots between... If we cannot connect the dots between 40,000 deaths south of the border over the last 4 years in Prohibition, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to connect the dots. These are disputes that are being played out with guns rather than the courts.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. How about right there?
My question is about Guantanamo. Would you close Guantanamo, and how would you do it if you were going to? Don't carry.
Well, one of the things that I think I was responsible for the miscommunication. I was asked, should we close Guantanamo? Well, my answer was perhaps not, because they are serving a function. But what Guantanamo does need to be shut down for is torture and detainment without being charged. Those practices have to end, but maybe very practically speaking, a Guantanamo needs to exist somewhere. That was my only statement.
I think that Gitmo, as it's been pejoratively termed, has come to represent an absolute stain on the honor of the United States and the United States military. And as a member of the United States military, I can tell you that that hits me very close to home. And I'm very ashamed that our leadership, that our civilian political leadership, participated in, created, and directed the ongoing execution of the things that are going on there at Guantanamo Bay. We are the United States. We are a republic, and we should stand for freedom and liberty, and we should not break our own constitution and our own laws just because we're doing so on the other side of a bay or the other side of an ocean or in some other foreign country, or even if it's an allied country. We need to hold ourselves to our standards of our principle of liberty and our constitutional constraints. And those prisoners that are currently being held in Guantanamo Bay are currently under the jurisdiction of the Constitution of the United States. And that's what the Constitution says, is that anybody being held under the jurisdiction of the United States must be provided equal protection and due process. And the fact that we're denying equal protection and due process to anyone blurs the line between the good guy and the bad guy. And we should not be about doing that. We should not be about, and look folks, look where we've seen this go. We started it there at Gitmo. We started it there with the people that were called the enemies. And now what do we see? Now we see the NDAA gets passed. And now we see that, the United States government can assassinate a U.S. citizen without due process, without equal protection. Where does it stop? Chief Justice John Marshall pointed out in his biography of George Washington that it's not always about the powers that we give the current administration and the current government. It's what is the next one and the next one and the next one going to do with those infringements upon our freedom and liberty. So as president, I will immediately close down Guantanamo Bay. I will immediately begin making a determination as to whether or not someone, to provide that equal protection, that due process that is required by our Constitution, so that way actual and true prisoners of war can be repatriated and dealt with by their host governments, and those that are found innocent of these things can be released responsibly, but we should not be having a gulag in the United States simply called Gitmo.
I've got a different take, and that is partially different, and that is that we need to eliminate the illegalities. But I would open up Gitmo. I would let the public from all over the world go in there and go to Cuba and open up Cuba and try to spread democracy.
Anybody else?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, I've been overruled by the state chair. We do have more time than I thought, so and he likes the way it's going, so we'll take some questions. Don?
Okay, it's possible that what I want to ask has already been answered, and nature required me to leave the room, so I didn't hear it. So I apologize if I'm going to be repeating. Can people hear me?
Yes.
All right. Every 4 years, we're told this is an unusual campaign that we're about to embark on. This one is an unusual campaign we're about to embark on, largely because of the campaign of Ron Paul, as has been mentioned. Now, I don't agree with Ron Paul on every issue. For one thing, I'm very strong.
We need a question.
Excuse me, let me please introduce the idea.
Please get to the phrasing of your question.
Okay. There are several possibilities, theoretical possibilities. One, Ron Paul gets enough votes so that he ought to get the Republican nomination, but is denied that nomination. Two, Ron Paul actually gets the nomination. Three, the demagogue who is likely to win in South Carolina and form a quite serious immediate threat to the country might get the Republican nomination, and Ron Paul is now out. But he's not out. He decides, I'm going to run on a third-party ticket, if possible. What third party do you think he would choose? And what are we prepared to do after the Republican convention, which follows the Libertarian convention, unfortunately, in that event? Because we really do have a chance to make a splash. Momentum, as Gary Johnson has told us, matters. Face recognition, name recognition.
We need your question, sir.
What do we do?
What do we do? That's the question.
As the nominee, I don't think it would be incumbent upon me to make that decision on my own. I'd have to consult with the other folks who ran, as well as the LP National in general, and we'd have to put our heads together and decide what to do. I can't tell you what I'd do right now.
I'm just going to take Ron Paul at his word, which has always been that it's not about him, it's about the message, and it's about the agenda. So this has to move forward.
Anyone else? Carl?
I think it's legally difficult to switch candidates in that way, so I think we go forward the way we plan to do, even though it might be advantageous. Many people would think to effect a switch, it probably wouldn't survive legal scrutiny.
Any one of the candidates up here needs to be prepared to say that they're in this for the long haul, to the benefit of the Libertarian Party, the Libertarian delegates, and the citizens of this republic, one way or another. We cannot, as you so aptly pointed out, sir, predict what the outcome of another party's nominations are going to be or what the future might hold. So what we need to be prepared to do as delegates is to elect or nominate, the candidate up here or slate of candidates that are going to be the best on those similar issues, so that way we can position ourselves for whatever may happen. And as you pointed out, we don't know what that may be. But we have to make sure that we have that alternative in place, and I think that's what we're all doing here.
Was that everybody?
No, wait.
Jim.
You've already asked questions.
I have a question. I'd like to start with Mr. Johnson and have you all comment. I want to read a quote from an interview. When it comes to military alliances, Israel is a key military ally and will remain so. How do you square that with the traditional American libertarian foreign policy of honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances for none?
I think you wanted to start with Gary on that, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I don't think that the two are in opposition, if you will. I mean, we do have allies. We do have allies in this world. They've been allies to this point. I have to believe that they will be going forward. I happen to believe that key to reducing military spending by 43% is having military allies, and having military allies take up the slack that the United States has not allowed them to take up for all these years, so that is the way to really cut military spending by 43%. When it comes to Iran, I think it's naive. I've been to Israel. I've met with Netanyahu. I think it's naive to think that Israel is not going to deal with Iran. And it will probably be in concert with the United States. And I do not believe that Iran is a military threat in any way whatsoever, as I didn't believe that Iraq was a military threat. I thought Afghanistan was warranted initially, but after 6 months of being in Afghanistan, we were attacked, we attacked back. After 6 months of being in Afghanistan, we wiped out Al-Qaeda. That was 10 years ago. Let's stop. I was opposed to Libya. I voted for George McGovern because I was against the Vietnam War. I mean, I've always been against. So,
I alluded earlier that, you know, we're already $15 trillion in debt. So as president, I will end all foreign aid. We should not continue to borrow money from creditor nations like China and India to give to, for example, Israel's allies, Israel's enemies, right? I think, and Ron Paul's talked about this, that's the biggest way to be a friend to Israel is not necessarily to keep giving them money or to go in there and protect them militarily, which is completely unconstitutional. The way to help protect them is to leave them alone and stop giving 10 times as much money to their enemies as we give to them. And we do that by stopping all this insanity with foreign aid when we're in so much debt to try to have to borrow money to buy friends. You alluded to our founders talking about honest friendship and trade with all nations, entangling alliances with none. Buying your friendship is not honest friendship, and I will not continue that policy.
I agree that we have to eliminate the foreign military aid. Most of it should be thrown out, and we should reduce taxes and help the economy in America. That's the best thing that we can do.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that. I'd just like to point out to RJ that we don't, when you're talking about borrowing money, we're not borrowing it primarily from China. We're borrowing it primarily from banks and central banks.
How about Thomas Rux?
A little bit of question about process. Are you familiar with how the party selects the vice president? And what are you looking for in a vice presidential candidate? And would you welcome any of these members on your ticket?
Who'd like to go first?
Well, I'm familiar with it slightly. I understand that the Libertarian Party and the delegates elect our vice presidential nominee as opposed to the eventual nominee simply selecting it, as is the case in the other parties. But I also have been told that that process occurs after one of us has received the nomination, and that person is then allowed to give a speech and ask for who they would like to see as their vice presidential nominee. And most certainly, it seems incredulous or incredible to me that any one of us up here would say that another one wouldn't be selected as a vice presidential nominee. I know that I would support any of these great candidates up here, and including a couple that weren't able to make it here today as part of that consideration.
I think that we should have one candidate with all of our qualities for both the president and vice presidential nomination, no, but I agree that all of us are acceptable. Absolutely. And we need more of us, by the way.
Everyone here is acceptable, and then there is the notion that there might be somebody else out there that really has worldwide name recognition and is willing to embark on this also. So there's that part of it, that no one up here would be excluded from that consideration. No one.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, at this point, we'll take about 2 or 3 more questions, depending on how fast it goes. Alton.
As someone among us can tell you, it's a bad thing to be left out of national televised debates. If you get the nomination, it's most likely you will be left out of the national debates. How would you get your foot into it? What would you do to get our message in those debates?
Can I take that one first?
Go ahead.
Since I've opted out of some of the other ones. Once again, if you're not, YouTube is the answer here. I've already constructed YouTubes where I responded to the Republican debates, individual questions posed to the various candidates, and there's slick ways that you can do that to at least get on the tube.
And I think that another thing that I'd like to kind of add to the premise of your question, sir, and that is that not to necessarily accept that in this particular process that we're going to be left out of the debates. And I believe that's going to be the case because as a standard bearer emerges from within our party, there is a huge awakening body politic out there of people that for them, issues of freedom and liberty, constitutional governance, and the restoration of our republic are huge issues of the day. And that's not been the case. That has absolutely not been the case for the last many decades. But now it is. And those folks are not going to just sit at home idly by and allow their chosen standard bearer to be kept out, which is why I've reached out to local communities, to local activist groups in Oklahoma, to some groups that are at the University of Oklahoma that are getting very, very politically active, and to rely on a lot of the younger people, the younger generations, to get out there and help spread our message throughout the body politic. And so that way, when the time comes that you're referring to, sir, that the premise of your question is not, it doesn't really hold. In other words, so many American people call the major networks, call the major news outlets and say, just like we all saw them do with Ron Paul in the debates last night, where they tried to skip over him from one of the questions, and half the people in the room were like, "Boo! Let him speak. He's the only doctor on the panel, and it's a medical question." I think that's what we're going to see happen in this cycle. I really do.
I see that we may have to call upon our friends, the 99%, to come to our aid and occupy the debates. We will appear at that Occupy debate, outside or inside. They can choose whichever way they want it.
I got excluded from 17 out of the 19 debates. I did all the things that everybody here is talking about. I tweeted the debates. We had the networks inundated with 15 to 20,000 calls. And I just have to tell you, it sucks to be excluded from the debates. And that's going to be the reality unless the Libertarian candidate pulls 15%.
Okay, we'll take one more. Mark.
Yeah, this kind of a follow-up question based on the assumption that the winner of the nomination is invited to the debate. In deciding who to vote for, it's important not to just consider what a candidate will do if elected, but how likely a candidate is to be elected. Can you each assess how well you would do in a debate with President Obama and whoever is the eventual Republican nominee?
Well, I'll take that first, and I think that that I can do very well against either one, whether it's President Obama or whoever the Republican nominee turns out to be, and that we can win votes, win them, and earn them in the arena of ideas from both the left and the right, and also in the middle, because we can take on the president on his horrible track record on the war. He promised when he was running for office 4 years ago, that he would end this war now, and he didn't. He, in fact, started a third one. So we can take him on that issue. He's continued to infringe upon, our liberty and our freedoms, and he has a horrible track record on, socially liberal issues. So we can win votes away from the president and the Democrat Party fair and square on that one. On the Republican side, we can win votes on economic liberty, on fiscally conservative or fiscally libertarian policy, because as we all saw, the Republican Party and most of their candidates went along with, raising the debt limit, going along with the president on the budget, going along with the Democrats on the NDAA and so many other issues. So I think that we need to be able to put a candidate up there on the stage who can take those issues on without fear and point out how both sides have utterly failed the American people, utterly failed our body politic, and utterly failed to uphold their constitutional responsibilities, and how neither side really knows where the limitations of their constitutional authority end. And so that's what we need to be able to do, put a candidate up there that can do that, and I think that I can.
I'd like to say this about that. I've sat here now for what, 2 hours. I'm appalled. Not a single question on the economy has been asked by you all. This is 75% of what everybody's going to be voting on. Wake up. There's nobody in this room, there's nobody in the presidential debates that knows the solution to this problem better than I do.
I've got something to say to that, and that is that if I were in the debates, I am telling you that the public will listen to what I have to say, that because I know how jobs can be created by individual people, by small business, and small business is the only way we're going to generate jobs. I work out in the country helping people defend against foreclosures. I understand the student loan problems. I'm really sympathetic to them, and the Republicans and Democrats created the mess. They're not going to be saying very much about it, so I will have that liberty to really bring to the public's attention the real problems and a solution for them.
New Mexico is 2-to-1 Democrat, and getting elected and then vetoing as many bills as I vetoed. They did a editorial cartoon where I was on a pogo stick, and the end of the pogo stick was veto, and I had vetoed every single square inch of the state. When I ran for re-election, the Democrats put up their best candidate. It was the best candidate. We did a poll, and I was up by 10 points. So how many times should I debate my new Democrat opponent, strongest candidate? Well, I controlled the debate process, so I debated him 28 times, and I ended up winning that election by a bigger margin than the actual 10%. So it is really incumbent on being on stage and debating, and it would really be fertile ground for debate against the two big government parties.
Okay, I want to thank our candidates for putting up with that barrage of questions, and thank our attendees for putting up with the answers. The next step is going to be the closing statements. There will be 3 minutes each. I have randomly selected an order. Bill Still, Carl Pearson, Gary Johnson, R.J. Harris, and while they're giving their statements, we'll be passing out ballots for the straw poll. And please don't pay attention to us, pay attention to them. And then we will quickly collect the ballots. We'll go through the auction and raffle stuff, and by that time we should have counted the ballots, and we'll announce the winner. So can I ask Bill to come to the podium and start off?
Well, like everybody else has said, we have an unprecedented opportunity this year because we have the specter of the pretend American opposing the pretend Republican, and I think that's going to leave at least 50% of the voting electorate out in the cold. So this is an opportunity like we've never had before. The problem with those two candidates is that both are bought and sold by the bank, and we're not. This ensures that no legislation, zero effective legislation, will possibly be omitted from Congress that curbs the domination of the big banks over the American and even the world economic system. I'm appalled, as I said before, that there were zero questions about the economy here. So here's my core message. We, the people, have to take back the money power. That's the most important thing that we can possibly do. And everybody should be focusing on that. As William Jennings Bryan said during the 1896 presidential election, without monetary reform, no other reforms are possible. What, do you have a question?
No, sorry, booing William Jennings Bryan, sorry.
Oh, you're booing William Jennings Bryan, the guy who proposed, the only one who carried at a presidential level a monetary reform agenda.
We'll talk later, we'll get drinks after.
Okay, there are two great pillars upon this monetary reformer bill. Number one, you have to forbid the ability of nations to borrow. Not just the United States, but every nation. We can only control this country, but no more national debt should be the mantra that the 99% sings from the street. And number two, banks have to be forbidden from lending money they don't actually have. It's nothing less than counterfeiting of the American currency. With those two great pillars of monetary reform, you can fix this system, and without, you cannot possibly have any effective political reform other than that. I encourage you all to go to still2012.com. Thanks a lot.
So, Carl.
In case I forget it, my new website is carlperson2012.com. Just want you to know that. I have a copy of my front page over there. This is a very important election that's coming up, and the Libertarians truly have a great opportunity here. The public is dying. The ever-increasing concentration of the economy is killing us. We need monetary reform, we need a lot of reform, but we're not going to get it. And the only ones that offer anything at all to the public are the Libertarian Party. Right now, we are the ones who can save America, and if we don't, we're going to watch it go further down the hill. This is what's happening. We can create jobs, we can help save people from losing their homes. There's a lot of things that we can do, and the voters will be looking to the third party for those things: employment, jobs, business opportunities, education. Our educational system is so bad, it's dominated by people with a vested interest in keeping it bad. We need to deregulate higher education and vocational education and allow the free market, private enterprise, capital to develop the programs that we need to give the public the training they need to carry us into the future. Small business needs technically oriented people. Colleges teach history. We can't hire college people. We need technically oriented people. So we've got to give that message to the public. If we do, they'll elect us. We've got to get into the debates. Thank you.
So politicians always talk about all the things they're going to do to save you and I think that libertarians talk about all the things they're not going to do. And that's what I'm going to talk about as President of the United States, all the things I'm not going to do. And I think my 750 vetoes as Governor of New Mexico gives me an authority to be able to say that. As Libertarian President, I'm going to promise to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I'm going to promise to veto expenditures, bills where expenditures exceed revenue. I promise to advocate on the part of the fair tax, which I think is an improvement. We need to reduce welfare, but we need to reduce warfare. We need to end corporate welfare. We need to end crony capitalism. And as Governor of New Mexico, good government was easy. It wasn't hard. And easy started with looking at the issues first and partisan politics last. We need constitutional adherence to gay rights. We need constitutional adherence to gun rights. We need constitutional adherence to private property rights. We need constitutional adherence for women's rights. The Tea Party has it right. We need to slash spending. But Occupy Wall Street has it right too. This country's for sale. Both countries have their hands out and they're taking money and they're creating a non-level playing field. Government can be a level playing field, and I talk now to my experience having been governor of New Mexico. We need to end the war on tens of millions of Americans by ending the drug war. We need a strong U.S. dollar, not a weak U.S. dollar. We need to stop printing money. We need to stop allowing the banks to loan money that they don't have. We need to secure the border, and that doesn't mean providing a fence. I hope to provide a voice for tens of millions of voters out there that are really, really discontented and are looking for an alternative. There is a real opportunity, and we all benefit from that opportunity. And then, as a point of personal privilege, with a few seconds to go, Carl, my pardons. I pardoned hundreds of individuals that were convicted of drug crimes in New Mexico. I pardoned hundreds of them. I commuted the sentences of 2, took them out of jail for serving crimes for what I would call absolutely non-violent drug crimes, commuting those sentences, but hundreds of pardons.
I'd like to begin my closing remarks by thanking, first of all of you for coming out and being part of this process and listening to the candidates carry on with our answers, and I hope we answered all of your questions very directly and pointedly. I would also like to thank my fellow candidates for being up here with me here today and doing our best to answer your questions as directly and pointedly. I'd also like to thank the Manhattan Libertarian Party, both the incoming and outgoing chairs, as well as the event organizer today, and just thank you all so much for putting on just an absolutely fabulous event, because folks, this really all begins. The restoration of our freedom, our liberty, our Constitution, and our Republic begins right here. It begins in rooms just like this one, as you all carry out your message that you've heard, that you already have in your heart, and that you heard articulated again here today with who you support, and you carry that out to your friends, your family, and your neighbors, and get them to go to our websites. And so with that, as I mentioned the websites, I'd like to add this as well. We need to have a process, folks. We really do need to have a process. We cannot have an anointing of simply the most famous among us. We need to be able to debate these issues, talk about them with you, the body politic, get your input, and we need to have a process. And so I'm going to ask all of you and all of you watching at home through this webcast video, please, I'm not saying donate to me, but pick one of these candidates, which includes, by the way, Lee Wrights, who could not be here today. Pick one of these candidates and please start making donations to us through our website, so that way we can travel to all the other rooms around the country like this one and have discussions and debates with folks just like you. And so that way our Libertarian Party can show that we are going to have a process. Because folks, if we don't have a debate, if we're not able to get out there on the news, if we're not able to talk about these issues that matter to all of you and to all of the citizens around the Republic, then the press isn't going to really pay attention. They need to be able to see a debate and nomination process. And folks, we cannot have that nomination process. These candidates cannot travel all the way around the country to 50 other states, if that's possible, and give you the nomination process you deserve. So please, folks at home, folks here, please pick a candidate. Start donating to us. Help us get to the places that we need to go. I know when I drove in here today, I saw a family and some children out on the sledding hill. And as a father of 5 myself, I looked at that and said, oh my God, I would so much more like to be out on that sledding hill with my 5 children sledding down that hill, because we love to go out and do things together and ride bikes on the OU campus and so forth.
More than a Manhattan party?
Right. But unfortunately, folks, we're not able to do that here today, and you've sacrificed your Saturday and your opportunity to do that with your own families and children to be here. Why? Because we understand that we don't restore freedom, liberty, the Constitution, and the Republic here today, now, moving forward. Those days like that might not occur in the future. So thank you for giving up your Saturday. Thank you for coming here and listening to us. Please support this excellent field of libertarian candidates. Thank you so much.
Let's stand up and let's give these guys a hand. One of these guys is going to win in November. I have never been so excited to be a libertarian in my life. This is our year.